to the True North podcast. My name is Petra. I am your host as well as the founder of Nordic Artists of New York, a community of Nordic and Baltic artists and creative visionaries in New York City. In this podcast, I get to have candid human conversations with the members of our community, discovering untold stories behind their art and creative vision, their life-changing journeys across the Atlantic, and how they stay connected to their northern roots in the concrete jungle. Are you ready? Let's go! Welcome everybody to the True North podcast by Nordic Artists of New York. My name is Petra, I am your host, and I am sitting here today with a wonderful Finnish artist, Sari Nordman. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Sari and then let her tell you her story. Sari Nordman, born and raised in Finland, is a New York-based interdisciplinary artist who has created public art projects, fiber art installations, and mixed media works. Many of her projects have been informed by climate change and respond to environmental justice issues. Nordman's works have been exhibited at Jamaica Flux, South Street Seaport, and Thomas Cole National Historic Site. She has served on environmental artist panels discussing her works and the social engagement in her process at Coal Plus Ice at the Kennedy Center and Climate Art Panel at South Street Seaport. Nordman develops a podcast called Tower, Bridging Voices on Climate Change. She also holds an MFA from NYU Tisch School of the Arts. Welcome, Sari. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you feeling?
Thank you, Petra. Nice to have this chat with you, and thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm very excited to hear more about you because you do so many different kinds of things. I feel like every time I stumble upon your Instagram or you send me an update of your work to the Nordic Artist email, it's always something new and exciting, something that I necessarily didn't expect from you. You do everything between, like we said, interdisciplinary, dance, visual art, environmental art, and I'm really eager to kind of get into all of it. I would love to start by hearing a little bit about sort of where you come from, your origin story. Would you tell me just a little bit about where you're from, how was the beginning of your life, and how did art find you?
Well, I come from Finland, from a small town from southwest Finland, not far from Turku, and not far from Helsinki either. And I was very active in nature. Nature is, I think, us Nordics, we know that nature is very important. And I often say to my American friends that nature was sort of, or the forest was sort of like our sacred place, like comparable to a church or temple,
Absolutely.
synagogue, a place like that. So nature was very important growing up. And also, I think now when I'm an arts educator myself, and thinking about all the arts education I got when I was a very young girl. So I think that has had very long term impact in my life, having had all that arts education. Um, and I still remember the exciting projects we did, and and how that was thrilling. And then at certain age, it was sort of an overnight love affair. I fell in love with dance, and I wanted to pursue a dance career. It was just like that. When you were young, you just didn't think too hard, and it was just like a love affair. And I actually I didn't finish my high school because I wanted to go to move to another town to get to be closer to dance education. And so I finished. That was like a 1 year sort of a school and occupational school. And then after that, I didn't want to move back to my hometown. I was 18 years old. So then I moved to Helsinki so that I could finish my high school and continue dance practice. And that wasn't even enough. So then I I I learned about one one choreographer, American choreographer who had a Finnish background, and I thought that she was
Mhm.
amazing. And then in my young mind, I thought that, "Oh, she's from New York. If I go to New York, I can be like her." So
Wow.
then I just said bye to my mom, my parents, my family. I have a sister and a brother, and I wanted to pursue my dance career in New York. So I came to New York, and this was in the 90s, and I just really loved New York. I thought that it was a very different place back then, but I think it was already changing. Because I remember that year when I came, many of the NEA grants were discontinued. So there were many dance
Mhm.
schools, dance companies who discontinued. So this was sort of the start of harder times for artists and the arts in general in the US.
Mm.
But I didn't obviously I didn't recognize that really because it was just a turning point. So I that didn't really affect me as much yet. But I remember I had a teacher, Murray Lewis was his name. He said that when he was younger, because when he was my teacher, I think he was in his 70s or 80s. And he said when he was younger, like dancers would dance 80% of the time during their week and 20% of other work. And now, even in the
Mm.
90s, it was the opposite. Like you had to
Yeah.
do other jobs, waiting tables or whatnot to sustain your dance career. I did have some one little grant from Finland, and then I had some insurance money, so I was able to. So I wasn't working, um, and then later, um, and I also got some grants when I pursued my bachelor's in dance and also my master's in fine arts in dance. And actually after that, I went back to Finland because I was sort of over my visa limits. Um, and while I was doing my master's and also my bachelor's, I've always had very many interests, and I studied photography. I've always done
Mm.
photography, and I did some sculpting classes and also singing. Actually, I did voice classes
Really?
for 3 semesters. In my family, we've always been singing. Um, and I did, in one dance performance, I sang, and so I have some idea how to use my singing, and so it was really lovely. I think my parents, they kind of felt like it paid back when I was able to sing. Once they heard me sing, they were kind of, because it was such a expensive education, so, I think they felt like, "Oh, that's lovely."
Aw.
So it was kinda nice. Um, and what else? So and I also, when I was doing my studies, I started doing choreography, like, my very first teacher, he encouraged me to choreography, and so I wanted to pursue that, and I was sort of, doing everything. Um, I guess that's, like, sort of the Finnish soul, making the costumes and the lighting and, producing and yeah.
DIY, yeah.
It was fun. So and then just w so then, the reason why I ended up coming back is that I met an American man, and we fell in love and got married, and so that's why I got a green card and then became a citizen, first time I got to vote in the elections was for Obama, which was great.
Wow. And when was that? How long ago was that?
2008, that was the
2008, okay.
yeah, that's when
And
he
since
became.
then, you have been pretty much based here, right?
Yeah, I mean, I came back, I think I came back 2004. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
yeah.
I mean, this is what I mean. It's incredible. You've done so many things. You've really gotten the full scope of, like, creative expression in some way. Do you feel, or rather I should say, because from my perspective, I always admire people like you who to me seem very sort of courageous and almost like fearless and free in exploring different avenues, exploring different disciplines, exploring different forms of their expression. Is that something that you feel like you were just kind of born that way, or has it been intimidating or scary for you to jump into something completely new?
Um, I sometimes I actually think about the fearlessness at times, and I think there is some privilege having grown up in a Nordic country is that um you are you are given opportunities to explore. And like I came from lower middle class family or come from, and yet I've had opportunities to try things and explore because that's part of the equity that we
Mhm.
are grown up in Finland. Like we all like I had some really wonderful teachers and then opportunities to explore different things. And so you don't feel like that's not that's not possible for me. And that's why I think that's where that fearlessness maybe comes from is like I can try.
Yeah,
I can try this
you
and
can
I
dabble.
yeah, and I sometimes I do notice like then being here is that people maybe feel intimidated by trying some things, because maybe they didn't have the opportunity to try. Um,
Mm.
and there is a certain, like, I don't know how to say this well, but certain openness to just exploring in Finland, and because then you have the social support behind you.
Mhm.
So it's like you don't have to just think about how you're gonna make your living and
Exactly.
survive.
Yeah.
Then you have opportunities to like, "Hey, I wanna try," um, like yeah, I'm thinking that's why there are so many, like, little startups in Finland because people are like, "Okay, let's try how this goes,"
Let's
and
give it a go. Yeah.
yeah, give it a go, and you don't have to worry about whether you are gonna, um, lose your healthcare or lose your some sort of a social security because you still have that. So,
That
and
is
I think
such a
that's
good point. Yeah.
yeah, so
Sorry,
in some ways
continue.
I feel like I grew up with that fearlessness and maybe that attitude or, um, is a sort of a sense of privilege in a way so that, um, I I could try. Yeah.
Yeah, and you feel like you will, to some extent, you will be taken care of. You'll survive. You'll be okay. The ground will not fall from under you just because you start something new and maybe even fail at something new.
Yeah. Yeah,
I've
that's
never
maybe
thought
even
of
a
it.
better way to say it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you're putting it perfectly, and I actually never like really I'm having like a real time epiphany because I never really connected the dots on that. But you're absolutely correct. Of course, it has to do with a lot of the structures of sort of the society and social justice and all of that. So you're absolutely correct there. Hey, everybody. Those of you who are listening to this podcast near its release date, we are now living in May 2026, meaning that the weather is really starting to warm up, and one thing is on the minds of every Nordic and Baltic person in the city, which is midsummer celebrations coming up in June. Most of you probably already know about the wonderful Swedish midsummer celebrations happening near Battery Park every year. They usually have a live music or a DJ and people are dancing. But I wanted to tell you about a slightly different type of midsummer celebration that is happening on Long Island between June 12th and June 14th. This is the Midsummer Weekend organized by the Estonian Educational Society, or as many of you will know them, Estonian House. I had the pleasure of attending this Midsummer Festival last year, and it was absolutely wonderful. It really felt like a little piece of home with me on Long Island. They had the traditional midsummer fire, they have a sauna, there's a pool, there's live music. Actually, this year there are some incredible performers. The main performer this year is a very popular Estonian folk rock group called Ztod, and guess who are their openers? That would be me, Petra Jasmina, as well as my very good friend, Finnish singer-songwriter Ida Metsberg. So I hope you'll join us for this lovely weekend of camping and barbecue and friends and community spirit and celebrating summer and a midsummer solstice. If you're interested in learning more or booking your tickets, please go to estonianhouseny.org. And just so you know, there is a limited amount of discounted early bird tickets if you book by June 1st. We hope to see you there. Happy Midsummer. Have you felt, probably more so coming here to the US, do you ever feel the pressure to be confined to one medium?
I think I actually feel the opposite because I
Wow.
have been able to make transitions. Yes, you in Finland you receive many opportunities to explore, but then you kind of like you track yourself in a certain direction. And I sometimes um I have sort of recently discovered why I still want, because people are like, why don't you go back to Finland? It's like the happiest people in the world and like the best like societal system kind of social
Yeah, we get that all the time.
yeah, people say like, why don't you go back? And I think it's more recently that I've discovered that actually this is why I really like to be here, is that like I was able to make a transition from the performing arts to visual arts. And I don't think that that would have been so simple in Finland. Like,
Mhm.
um, and I think this like now I in some ways I feel like I'm living that American dream that you can sort of create yourself and wear many hats. I mean, it's a lot of sort of shuffling um and it can be very challenging, but then it's like it's also really interesting to like explore different avenues. And like I work as a teaching artist in New York City's public schools, and also I've worked in a um, correctional facility, and then been doing my environmental work, and I have a big part of my environmental work is the social engagement. And I work with very diverse communities doing my work, my educational work, and also my artwork. Um, and I feel that's very enriching to me.
Mhm.
Um, and then and the both of them, like the educational work and the artwork, they kind of feed each other. That
Mhm.
I learned from one, and then it helps me make kind of make the other, create the other. And and then having been a dancer, I've been touring the country and also a little bit internationally. I was working with a choreographer who is um, uh, very talented, Dean Moss, and very interesting choreographer and a thinker. And and then um, and then having changed, done the shift because when I kind of like hit the wall when I was doing my dance career, and I really wanted to start do more choreography work. And I sort of hit the wall, and I finally gave myself a deadline, and I was like, if things don't get better, I need to
Mhm.
just change. And then the deadline came, and I realized that okay, this is it.
Wow.
to move on, and it was very challenging time, but I think I was smart that I gave myself that deadline, and I started exploring other things, and then I had a friend who is a photographer and a video maker, and he kind of encouraged me to explore video, and so in the transition period, I was doing dance video, and, but then I realized because dance is sort of so much about a production where you need to have
Mhm.
music and theater and scheduling dancers and all that, and I kind of didn't wanna go to another production mode. Like, I just wanted to be in the process and make my own work, and so then
Mm.
I, um I traveled to Greece a lot, in that transition period, and I
Oh,
went to
wow.
yeah, and I've always liked history, so I traveled to many archaeological sites, and I kinda, um I was sort of really, blown away when I went to these archaeological sites that are thousands of years old, and then seeing these beautiful marble walls and temples and towers, and learning about these magnificent peoples, and then seeing the little plants growing through the marbles, and just that, like that sustaining quality of nature and that perseverance, and that kind of like just really threw me, um and then I started thinking about the remains and the contemporary remains, and comparing them with the ancient remains, and so that's how I started my dance video that was about it's actually called Remains, and then after one of the visits, I had this idea that I wanted to build a fallen tower. So now I'm just going to this, like, transition period, how I moved.
I was just gonna ask you to, so you just went there. I love this. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, but I like, after that long journey, so it's a, like, a long story, but, after that journey, I just think it's amazing that I was able to, shift uh, f from performing arts to visual arts, and I think it would have not been as simple in Finland as it was here, and,
Hmm.
so that's been sort of a blessing here, I think.
That's so fascinating. There are so many connection points for me in your story. I don't know if you know this, but I actually lived in Greece for a while,
Oh.
and my job was to guide excursions in these historical sites. So we have probably like walked the same footsteps with you in some sense, and I remember thinking exactly the same when I would see the nature kind of take over these. Um, Thousands of years old structures, and how I don't know, there's just something really magical to me about it because it's kind of like that, that quote. I'm not myself a religious person, but I love the quote of man makes plans and God laughs. And I think that, this is kind of the same about nature. It's just we can try to build all these lasting structures, and we have, and we've managed, and they're, of course, amazing how much of this is left with thousands of years ago. But in the end, nature will always prevail, and will always kind of take over in its sense. So I'm connecting to a lot of what you're kind of saying about your travels in Greece. Why Greece? Why did that come to be?
Well, this was the friend who was a videographer, photographer. He himself had a Herodotus project, and,
Mhm.
so he invited me to join his trip, and so actually hadn't ever been to Greece before, and then I started, actually now last time I was there was 2019, but between 2013 and 2019, I traveled there maybe like 10 times or
Oh,
something.
wow.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I
Well,
just loved it so much, but then, I was supposed to have an artist residency in 2020, but then that was the pandemic, and, um and then some reason I haven't made it back. I would love to
Mm.
talk to you more about Greece. Yeah, because I
We'll do a whole second podcast just about Greece. We can nerd out on on all the historical structures. But I'm so glad that you kind of went into this the transitional period, because I find it very interesting as someone who myself, of course, I am in the performing arts. I'm a musician, and I often have a sense of almost like envy for people who have something material that they're working with, something, what's the word that I'm looking for, like something
tangible.
that they can touch. Yeah. Because that's something that I sometimes crave in my life, I find, and in my expression, something you can hold in your hand and observe. um because obviously music, although is the love of my life, it often is very sort of abstract and invisible and in the air in some way. So I'm curious about that kind of well, you kind of gave us the framework of like how it came to be that you then traveled over to the visual arts side in some sense. But I'd love to hear more about just the practical means. How did you begin? How did you try out a bunch of different forms of handicraft and materials, or how did you kind of end up? For example, if we take your work, anxiety, which we're going to talk about a lot in a little bit, because I really want to learn more about that. But how how do you begin? I guess is my question.
Um, well, I have kind of like I have two projects really that I've been working on. One is Tower, and the second one is Anxiety, and it's sort of like they are like the big projects, and then there are like small projects that are sort of all kind of under the umbrella of one project. And then also in some ways, Tower and Anxiety, they connect. And I had after one of my visits to Greece, I came back to New York City, and then I had this just it was like a vision. I had this image of a Wallen Tower, and sometimes I have thought about like, okay, I was here during 9/11, like whether I that was also somewhere in the subconsciousness, um, and sort of thinking about civilization and the remains and how nature is able to sustain. You talked about prevailing, and whether nature is able to prevail our time, the contemporary times, and I mean, there's a little bit like this doomsday imagery, but so tower originally was to be a fallen tower, but then I realized
Hmm.
that in order for me to make a fallen tower, I actually had to build a tower, and
Mm.
and then I started talking about it and making it, and people were like, "Oh, like Tower of Babel." And I was like, "Yeah, that's interesting. It is like a Tower of Babel." And I had an opportunity in an artist residency at Catwalk Institute in Catskill, New York, to build the first prototype. And there's this beautiful. It's like this Hudson Valley region with these sloping hills, and there I installed it for the first time, this wire mesh tower, and it was to frame plastic waste. That was
Mm.
the only purpose of the first tower, just to frame plastic waste. So, and then when I installed it, I saw how I it really spoke to me, and then I was thinking more about the Tower of Babel, and I felt like the tower had to be multilingual, and then because I now had some experience with video work, I was thinking I should interview people, and it had to be something multilingual and something related to environment,
Mm.
and that was also the time when Trump was the president for the first time, and there was this very anti-science climate. And
Mhm.
having been traveled around the US, I've talked to people and I've learned people have talked about like the winters are shorter, there's less snow, the summers are hotter and drier, and so forth. And I was like, well, if we can't believe in science, then maybe we can believe in people's stories. And
Mhm.
so then I had this idea that I need to start collecting people sharing their personal experiences with climate change. And that was my sort of initial idea. And first I tested it with my friends, just make it easy. And then I worked with one gallery to I had one day open call, and I was just impressed how many people came. I mean, it wasn't like tens and tens of people because one interview takes like at least like 20 minutes. So,
Mhm.
but anyway, it was like a full 6 hours, I think, went by quickly. Like I didn't even have time
Wow.
for my lunch or something. um, and so that's how the journey began for Tower. And then I had a Jamaica Flux exhibition, and I actually during the pandemic I learned welding, and I that was my
That's like,
pandemic.
yeah, I love how you just say, like, "I just learned welding," and I'm like, "What? That's
Well,
incredible."
I think one thing what was great about pandemic is that you did not have to be in the New York City area. So I lived
Yeah.
in Troy, New York, and there was this maker's space, tech
Mhm.
cafe, and that's where they gave. I took some classes, welding classes, and I can't say that I'm a great welder, but I can do some spot welds. And so I just made this like steel frame, like cubes. And I had like 9 cubes. They are like 18 inches by 18. Yeah. So the
Wow.
whole tower came to be like 13 and a half feet. I'm not quite sure
Wow.
how much it's in meters. Um, and
Where is it now physically?
oh, it's which way am I?
Oh, it's there? Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
good.
It's
So
just cut from the frame, so I don't
yeah,
see
so
it.
that's
Oh,
part
oh,
of the
oh,
frame.
no, I do
Yeah.
see it. Oh,
And then
wow.
later I recycled the tower for Anxiety Tower. Um, so I have recycled, and I have so it's not the full tower, but I thought that a part of it I can I can store in my living room, kind of like as a gallery. Uh,
Absolutely. I have to say, I'm gonna let you continue, but I have to say, I just find it so inspiring how sort of the openness and freedom and, like I said, like bravery that you have to just hop between these different forms of putting art out there. I mean, I because I've often thought of myself as someone who's like, yeah, I do podcasting and then I do the production stuff and then I do video and then I do music. But like you take this to the next level. You just I just learned welding and then I did this and I find
well,
this
it
so
wasn't quite
inspiring.
like I just learned welding. I did have some friends who were like, "You need to learn welding," and I was like, "My
Yeah.
God, no, I can't." And then
Yeah.
"You need to learn welding," and I was like, "Ah."
Wow.
And then I just went there. I was like, "Can I take a class? And can I try?" And
Yeah.
it was just like little by little, and then it was like this realization, like, "Wow, I can use power tools." Like that was actually pretty incredible, like, to, like, saw steel and all that is like yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
Hei, welcome, välkomna, tervetuloa. At Finlandia Foundation, we celebrate Finnish American heritage and work to build bridges between Finland and the United States, connecting past, present, and future through culture. We're proud to partner with Nordic Artists of New York, bringing Nordic American voices to a global stage through the True North podcast. You can support projects like this by joining our community and contributing at finlandiafoundation.org. And now, back to the show. Ja nyt takaisin ohjelmaan.
I would love to move on to talk a little bit more about anxiety. So first of all, I want to read for those of our listeners who have not yet been in connection with Sari's work, Anxiety, in any way, I want to just read a little short excerpt of it because I thought that this was brilliantly written and very descriptive. Anxiety is a communally made fiber art project that highlights tapestries knotted. Sorry, now I misread it. Anxiety, a communally made fiber art project, highlights tapestries knotted with recycled plastic film. The project addresses the impacts of single-use plastics while giving visual form to ecological anxiety and transforming collective concern into a shared tactile experience. Something about just saying out loud the words transforming collective concern or transforming collective anxiety is very sort of something moves within me when I read that, because I don't think I have heard it put in those terms before, that there is like a collective anxiety that we share that obviously impacts people on a very sort of personal, kind of what you were describing, in a personal experience, and a collective experience, and in all areas of our life. I would love to hear a little bit more about how you kind of came into this idea and also then the sort of communal aspect of it, how that came to be, what you did with these amazing groups of people who helped you make this project come to life.
So collective anxiety, I think doing the Tower projects, just going back a little bit to that, and to date, I have interviewed at least 80 people speaking in 35 different languages, and most people in the Tower project have been refugees or immigrants, and I learned about the global concern, and many of my interviewees said that we need to globally collaborate to battle climate change. And so this was my first realization that this is a global problem. We are actually having this very collective problem. And some people are obviously more impacted. People in countries that are not as well off, like the US or European countries, we can somehow adapt better. But there are many countries that don't have that opportunity to adapt to climate changes the same way. Like the US is a very rich country. There we can recreate infrastructure and things to battle climate change. So the second part of your question again,
the communal aspect of it.
Yeah, and then so actually during the pandemic, I also spent a little more time in Finland, and I in my family there's always been a lot of handcrafts making, and growing up in the 80s, that was sort of kind of looked down upon, because it was easier to purchase things in the store and catalogs, and like, why make your own things, and so but then I became inspired to make these sort of reuse, like Ria rugs, and I was like, plastic has been something that I'm very bothered by, like the tower, it's still framing plastic waste, and then I wanted to try how I could make the rugs, the tapestries out of plastic. And again, this was actually at the Catwalk Institute. I was there in an artist residency, and that's when I first started making them in 2022. And then I wanted to invite people to participate because, like, Tower was very much about social engagement. And same thing, I wanted to discover that same social engagement with the Anxiety Project. And I also want to tell a story about how the title came about. Um, but then I had these, like, I again in a very friendly environments. First, I tried, like, okay, this is how I make this knot, and I just wanted to see how people react to it, And first I was calling it weaving, and some weaver came to the workshop and it was like, this is not weaving. And then she refused to do it. And I was like, okay, I can't call this weaving.
You
Like,
had to rebrand.
yeah, so I started calling it knotting. And it is sort of like a latch hook type of a weave or a knot. Um, and so all this is also like all this social engagement is also for an opportunity for me to learn from people. And actually, one of the social engagement events, one participant said like, "Oh, you could also make it like this." And I was like, "Oh, that's actually an easier way to teach it because the method I do maybe is a little harder for people to do." And so then in social engagement events, I give people two options to make it, and usually they
Hmm.
choose the easier way. And you can't really
And
weave plastic because it doesn't like pull, like it would just like stretch and then rip. So
yeah, and that's what I just wanted to interrupt a little bit just for the listeners who haven't yet seen this work. And I really highly encourage that you go on to Sari's Instagram or website to just get an idea, visual idea of what this work is. But essentially, what you're knotting is these small strips of recycled plastic, right?
yeah. Yeah. So it's all different kinds of packaging materials, bubble wrap, um, shopping bags, even dry food um, uh, bags, uh, bread bags, like all kinds of any possible like I moved to a new apartment and I had to buy a fridge and it was like all packed in plastic. I'm using that like furniture. It's all packed in plastic. I've used
Yeah,
yeah yeah,
everything
and
in
I
this
have
country is
people
wrapped in plastic.
yeah, everything is wrapped in plastic. And I have
Yeah.
people collect plastic for me. Um So I have also that in different kinds of social engagement. I always ask that the venues they collect plastic for me, and the participants would bring plastic, and then any leftovers I take that. So um, that's the process. Um, and then about the title, um, I I think at the time people are talking a lot about different anxieties and I think I was hearing about the ecological anxiety and and I think and you were also talking about that little thing of working with your fingers and doing something tangible, like tower, there was already something tangible because I was doing the welding and then the wire mesh work, but the video is still like it's more like working on, Final Cut Pro or,
Yeah.
video work, it's not less tangible, but then when I was doing this very simple, detailed work, I realized this immense calm about doing
Mhm.
this, and I was like, "Oh, this is like my anxiety project, like, this is giving me a lot of calm," and at the same time feeling this agency that I'm doing something about the environmental crisis we are in, and it just felt very appropriate to title it Anxiety Project.
Yeah.
So that was from the own realization, and I would say like any handcrafts is probably very anxiety relieving because you
Mhm.
are doing something tangible with your fingers and now when I work with students, like I used to mostly teach dance, but I now teach also like recycled art and visual arts and I realized with my students, like, they react very different way to dance and to this little making with their fingers. Like, it can be very calming to them. Like, sometimes dance can be overstimulating.
Mm.
But then, this visual arts practice, there's this immense calm that comes to them, and so that's how the name and I also felt it was very appropriate name because of the ecological anxiety and because the material that I use is plastic, which is a major contributor for global warming because it's made out of oil. I have to say that because many people don't know that. And
Yeah.
so and it's also like an immense health risk, like because of all the microplastic, nanoplastic, and it's raining from the sky. It's we are eating it. It's like in our brains everywhere. So
Yeah.
that's just thinking about it, and I just want to scream from anxiety.
Yes. Yes, exactly. I'm sure that you've gotten this reaction a lot, but I really I haven't seen the work in person yet, which I hope to do at some point. But the pictures, and I saw some of the installation video that you posted. Um, there is something really interesting to me about this because it's like I feel like your work, and I'd love to hear from you if this was intentional or not, but I feel like this work is such a perfect mirroring of the climate crisis in the sense that in the first thing that happens is that some big company somewhere, whether it's the fridge delivery company or whoever, creates this huge canvas of plastic, just like that, recklessly, easily, quickly, cheaply, and with probably no further thought to anything. And then a group of people in community gathers to kind of take it apart into these little straps and uses their own little fingers in what we were speaking about in this tangible, almost meditative way to knot it into something beautiful. And yet I feel like the form of the thing, to me personally, when I see it, feels like anxiety because it has this kind of like prickly um texture to it somehow. So I just think that it's really such a brilliant mirroring of how the climate change actually is. If you look at it from a sort of zooming out perspective, it's like all these big corporations and governments just making these big decisions, and then small organizations, small communities, individual people trying our best to like rinse out our recycling to make some kind of a small impact. Um, I'm curious, first of all, if that was your intention, and second of all, I'm very curious to hear about people's reactions to this piece.
First of all, thank you for saying that. That was really beautifully said. So thank you for saying that. Um, People's reactions. I have worked on the anxiety project through social engagement in many occasions, and um, for instance, at King Manor Museum and New York City summer streets in Harlem and the Bronx, and many smaller venues or workshops, um, and there is so often people say, yes, there's way too much plastic, and I can see how people have the same connection than I do. Like, this is how I can this is a task, something that I can do, something that is easy and I can help. And I've also realized that people want to have tasks, something that they
Mhm.
can do to help alleviate problems and join in helping these environmental crises we are in, um, help mitigate these problems. Um, this project is like, and I say that it's for any age group. Like, as soon as you can tie your own shoelaces, basically you can do this knot. Like, it's, and I've seen kids who get so focused on it, and because it's kind of like a opportunity to hone on this one little action, and then you have these very colorful pieces, and it's kind of fun to see how the colors come about, and then it's fluffy, and I can see people also, like, they want to just touch it,
Touch it. Yeah.
because it's
I want to touch it
uh,
through the screen.
yeah, so it has a very this tactile, uh it's a tactile is seductive. I can see that. And And I cut the strips kind of like they are pointed, so it has a little bit like this spiky feel as well.
Mhm.
So I think that so it doesn't have like a rounded edge, and it's a little bit spiky. And because it's plastic, it's also like it holds its form, kind of. So it kind of like pops at you. Um,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, and I have to say, like, working with people has impacted a lot the process. And um um sorry, now I forgot the last part of your question.
No, no, no. No. Actually, I think you answered it. I was just asking people's reactions to it, and I think that you answered it perfectly. That they have felt sort of like an agency to do something, to
Mhm.
have a directive to do this one simple thing. And then also you mentioned about the kind of wanting to touch it, which I think is yes, exactly. I sign. I also want to touch it. Um,
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing about these two projects, the tower and the anxiety. And please do let us know any future times when they are publicly available. Are we able to see them in person somewhere now, unless we are invited to your home?
Well, I will have I was just recently awarded a residency at Governors Island at the Art
Ah,
Center. So they will be open studios coming, I think, pretty much every month, like one of the Saturdays. So I can
oh,
let you know
wonderful.
that.
When does
I'm
that
very
start?
excited about this residency. So I will have a studio at Governors Island, and I will continue working on the anxiety project.
Hi, this is Petra with a quick update from the present day. I'm excited to share that Sari is currently the artist in residence at the Art Center on Governors Island. This LMCC Art and Climate Residency runs through October 2026. She's also inviting us to visit her at her open studios Saturdays, June 20th, July 25th, August 22nd, and September 26th from 12 to 5 p.m. Sari also shares. At a time when so many environmental protections are being cancelled and dismantled, I'm thrilled to share space with like minded artists. Come and see what we create to help nature. I hope you get a chance to take a lovely day trip to the green Governors Island and visit Sari at her open studios. We are almost at the end of our talk, but I did want to touch on a few things that I feel like so these are things that I wanted to ask all of the artists that I interview, regardless of discipline, or almost like because of all the different disciplines that we get to have represented. Um, Obviously, being a freelancer, being a full time artist, creative person, is a very different sort of weekly schedule, a monthly schedule than someone who works a 9 to 5 job, for example. And I'm very curious to hear about your, after having such a sort of versatile, long career in doing all these different things, how do you stay organized? What are some actual practical tools to, like, how do you know where you need to be next Tuesday at 3 p.m.? Is it a virtual calendar? Is it a planner? Is it some kind of AI assistant? Is it a to-do list? Like, what do you actually use to stay organized?
Well, I think I'm sort of fortunate. I am organized. So that's because I think some people have harder time being organized, and I am very organized. And I'm a Mac person, so I have my calendar and my um yeah, like um alert systems and reminding me. And I guess like has been my sort of career all the time, is that I'm shuffling different hats. I'm an educator, and my teaching work changes almost monthly. Not all the time, but it's like there are changes to my schedule almost weekly. So like calendar is very important to me because I can't possibly remember all the things that I have to do every week. And then plus there are application deadlines, so I post those in my calendar. And and then um yeah, and obviously exhibitions. I know how much time I need to um uh, reserve for doing something. So starting early enough, and I'm kind of like I'm not like the last minute kind of a person because that would give me too much anxiety. So I,
Yeah.
I generally start early and then I might work till the deadline, but yeah, but I start early
Yeah.
enough so that I have because I'm I like that I'm able to be objective and kind of like see it from not just like work right away and then submit or have an exhibition, but like have an objective eye as you're
Hmm.
approaching an exhibition and be able to look back and revise and edit and so forth. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. Calendar seems to be something that I feel like is so obvious to some of us who are sort of calendar geeks in that sense that like to use it for everything. But then I also know people who when I send something and I'm like, "Hey, can you accept this calendar link?" They're like, "What? I don't use anything." And I'm like, "How do you survive? How do you organize your weeks or your lives?" But we're different that way. Another thing that I wanted to touch upon, which is another thing that I wanted to ask everybody that I speak to, is the financial side of artistry. And the reason that I want to touch upon this is not to pry on anyone's personal finances, but to um, share some information and sort of understanding of how the financial structure in different fields works. Because the way that one makes a living with music, for example, or with theater, or with visual arts, or with film is so completely different. And so I wonder if you could, and you can be as personal or as impersonal as you wish, but I wonder if you could share me a little bit of like a pie chart of like someone doing what you do. What would be the big pieces of, or like, let's say, starting with the big pieces of the pie chart of like, where does your living kind of come from?
Mm. Well, when I was in the performing arts, it came from being a performer, dancer. I had some income. I mean, I've always been low income, um, and then from teaching. So those were like the major. And I have certified personal trainer, fitness trainer. So when I was a performing arts, I did more of that. I'm still certified, but actually I have not pursued um, a personal training anymore. Um, but now I'm working education, and then also I commissions for these different works, and then I have when I've been in visual arts, I've had more luck in getting grants. So like I
Hmm.
got New York State Council on the Arts Support for Artists grant.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's no small feat.
Yeah, I mean, compared to Finland, like, these grants are still smaller, but that was a big milestone, um, like, getting a bigger grant in this country, because I think that's how you
Mhm.
sort of develop that, you need to get the small grants and then, yeah, getting to the bigger grants. Yeah.
Precisely.
Keeping my fingers crossed for some other bigger grants.
Yes, yes. And if anyone is listening with power to do that, please do. Wonderful. Let me see. Oh, yes, one more question, and then I have a little sort of like rapid fire portion. 10 very short questions where you get to answer the first thing that comes to your mind. But before
Uh-oh.
that, um, yeah, uh-oh, everyone's always. Some people are very excited. Some people are panicked. So it's a very varying reaction. I would love to talk about future goals. What is the dream right now? What do you wish that would happen in your life and in your career next?
Um, I wanna continue working with a public. Social engagement is very enriching to me. Making public artworks. That's what I love to do, making bigger projects and potentially because I'm still sort of like the one person show. So work towards more of a production where I can work with an architect and fabricators and so forth. making bigger works, more impactful works, hopefully. Um, be healthy. Um,
Yeah.
have a life with my partner who I really love and our dog. and
What
and
kind of dog do you have?
um she's a mix, but has border collie, mostly border collie.
Oh, I love those things.
Mm,
Okay.
yeah, she's a very smart and very active dog. And I love to travel. I love hiking. I love hiking mountains. Um, there's something um, kind of psychological about hiking mountains and being able to have that physical ability. I guess that's where my dance background comes. That I'm very physically active still. So that was
Mhm.
not a short answer, but
No, that was perfect. That was perfect. Okay, sorry. So rapid fire. We're trying to think of a different name for this section. We've asked our listeners to give us some ideas, and also if you have any ideas, we're trying to name this something that is fast and Nordic. So if you think of something that is fast and Nordic, we can name it that instead of rapid fire. But so this is 10 questions that I ask everybody. And just the first thing that comes to your mind, don't think about the answers too much. First question. If you couldn't be an artist of any kind, what would you do for a living?
um, I've never thought of that. I am not a 9 to 5 person. I've never been able to go with the routine. So um, I don't know. I
You
am
could maybe still
organized.
educate.
Yeah, but that's still art related. I
Yeah.
did in one point when I had a hard time artistically, I was thinking about becoming a certified teacher, but that was like
Hmm.
on second thought. Uh, yeah, like I just could not sustain.
Okay.
Yeah, I would not be
Okay.
happy.
But I mean, that's an honest answer.
Mm.
Okay. Number two, what is something you miss from home?
There are certain foods that I like. I love rye bread. I just love that's
Hmm.
like my favorite bread. And I can't get the best rye bread here. Um,
Hmm.
and I'm lucky my partner has a sauna, so
Oh,
I don't have to
really?
miss
Oh, my
sauna
goodness.
anymore. I do miss that sometimes you can sauna bathe and then you can just like plunge into a lake. That would be wonderful if I had access to something like that more frequently.
That's the best.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the best. Uh,
Good answer.
and I do
Um,
miss, yeah, and I miss that you can just walk into a forest because nature is so much more accessible in Finland. And here you have to drive an hour or half hour minimum, and then you still hear tons of highway noise or something like that. So
exactly. It always feels like an excursion to kind of get into nature in some sense. Yeah. I'm right there with you. Number three, what is your favorite sort of secret gem place in New York City? Could be a business, it could be a natural place, anything that you can think of.
actually, Governor's Island is extremely beautiful. Yeah,
Hmm.
they've worked on um, making the park extremely beautiful. Yeah, it is a
Yeah,
gem
that's true.
place.
And the views are amazing. And on a
Yeah.
hot summer day, the breeze, it's so wonderful. Okay, number four. If you could have your art showcased at any famous building in the world, which one would it be?
Any famous building? Um, I have a idea for the Washington Square Park Arch.
Hmm. That sounds very cool. Coming up
Coming
in the previous episode, in the next episode. Um, what is the worst advice you've ever received?
It's for the resume.
Okay. What kind of advice?
Um, well, sometimes I feel like then it was like too much exploitation, like young artists, and so like it's for the resume, and and
Oh yeah, that is the advice. It's for that's okay.
Yeah.
That's great. I thought you meant like
Sometimes
something about the resume. Yeah.
yeah, and then you're like, then you're not requesting pay, and you're just working, but it's not. I don't think it's really helping. Like, you also have to have some more self-worth, and being a young immigrant artist, it's like sometimes you didn't realize that, wow, this was
Yeah.
exploitation. Mm.
Wow. It's for the resume. That's powerful. Um, what is the best advice you've ever received?
Um, in education, one teacher once said to me, and I have also applied this very much in my art practice, is that meet the student where they are at. Because I work with many students on autism spectrum, and sometimes it was over planning the classes, and but then you had, instead of like, I need to do this plan and I need to make this and I need to teach this to the students, but then actually kind of listening more and trying to be in the same wavelength with the student. I discovered that it was actually, my classes became more successful.
Hmm.
The same thing applies to my art practice, is that when I do lots of social engagement practice, is that meeting people where they are at, and not trying to bring myself like, okay, I'm doing this work and now I want you to contribute. It's not about
Yeah,
meeting people where they at, and
that's very good.
then the exchanges are really lovely.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Okay, number 7. What work, achievement, or milestone are you most proud of?
I think transitioning from the performing arts to visual arts.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm also proud of you for that. What is the best part of being part of the Nordic Artists of New York community? What is the best part of it for you?
Well, I'm very excited to have met you, Yasmina. I think you are very energetic. I like your energy, and
Oh, thank you.
also your intuition, and even from this podcast, I can see you are a good listener and connector. So yeah,
Thank you so
that's
much.
yeah. So
Oh, that warms my heart. You know, this is the second episode we're recording, so this is very brand new to me. So thank you so much for saying
And
that.
I think also, because I know your mission statement is about environmentalism, and I connect with the values of Nordic countries, which is about environmentalism, and so that's also, I'm very excited to be part of Nordic artists for that reason.
Yeah, thank you. We're very excited to have you. What would you say to an artist thinking about moving to New York?
Think twice. Um, um,
Yeah. That's actually like let's put a period on that because I think that's perfect. Think twice. That's it. Very good. And number 10, what is your favorite quote, poem, or lyric? Do you have some kind of mantra or something that you could say by heart?
um, I still sometimes sing my favorite song when I was doing singing is Kurt Weill's "My Ship." My ship has sails. Obviously, I'm not warmed up. Um, I can say it's like, um, it's not like the most like, it's about love. It's like having all these riches, like gems and paradise and rubies, and they are filling the ship, and like there's all this splendor on the ship. But if my true love is not on this ship, then
Hmm.
ship doesn't have any meaning. So
Oh, I
I
have to go and listen to that.
song, I love the song, the melody, and the lyrics are great too. And the
Yeah.
concept, and I still remember the lyrics, and I sing it time to time when I dare.
when you're there. Wonderful. I have to go listen to that. I have to add to that. I read a quote on your website that I thought was incredibly powerful. When you go to sort of your artist statement, the first thing that it says is, "Hope is a discipline, despair is an indulgence."
Yeah.
And I thought that was brilliant and very sort of descriptive of your work that you do in the world. So
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. That is I actually hope is a discipline. I one time because I listen to the New York Times quite a lot. People were talking about there was interview who talked about hope being a discipline. And then I talked about that particular podcast with my partner, and he was like, "Yeah, that's interesting because then the opposite, um, like, um, oops,
the opposite like side of the coin or
yeah, hold on, sorry, I think you need to hope is a discipline." Now I lost,
oh, despair is an indulgence.
yeah, despair,
Is that what you're looking for? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, despair being an indulgence. So he came up with the second part, despair being an indulgence, and
Mm.
um uh so I have thought about that a lot because sometimes like Finns tend to be very realistic to a point of being a little on the negative side, and uh, and it's a little bit of despair, and then thinking about this country also, like, I mean, there's so much that goes with it, like, um all the complaining, and um that's sort of disparity, and kind of how there's this sweet juice to the disparity, like it's like you get to complain, but then to really want a change you need to have hope, and I think we are in a very challenging time with all the violence and the environmental disasters that are happening, and we could just become paralyzed because the despair can really be so overwhelming. So, like, continuing the hope, and, like, trying to help people find agency, uh,
Mm.
I think is important. Yeah, I think it's a very powerful quote.
Absolutely.
So that's not just from me, that's from when I was listening to this New York Times and then talking with my partner. Yeah, and I felt,
Yeah.
"Oh, that is perfect." How I
It is perfect.
Yeah.
Um, Last thing, Sari, tell us where to find your podcast. So you told us a little bit about the tower project, and from this video installation project, it then grew into a podcast, and you're having such amazing conversations with a whole variety of people. Where can we find that?
Um, so yes, so when the second Trump administration and again there's this all science denial, I felt like I needed to make the tower project more accessible because it's mostly living on my hard drive. So that's why I decided to turn it into a podcast, and so it's on YouTube only. Maybe now I'm gonna learn from you how to do this podcast more professionally, and I can use more platforms. So it's at Sari Nordman, SARINORDMAN. So youtube.com /at Sari Nordman. That's where you can find the podcast. And the podcast name is Tower Bridging Voices on Climate Change. Um, and mostly it's
Yes.
geared towards the audiences in this country, but the people have been multilingual from different countries, and yeah.
Yes,
And
very excited to go listen. And we're going to put a link to the podcast in our show notes as well, so people can find it easily. Sari, thank you so much for this lovely hour. Thank you so much for sharing so openly, and thank you for everything you do. I mean, you really are, like I said, you really are sort of transforming hope into something something that we can see and touch and hear. So it's incredibly important, and we're really glad to have you part of this new community. And we're going to post everything about the Governor's Island whenever the dates come about. And best of luck with everything, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Kiitos, tack, aita, paldies, and ačiū for listening to the True North podcast by Nordic Artists of New York. If you enjoyed our conversation today, please make sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Music and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you won't miss the next episode. In the meantime, you can follow our community on Instagram and Facebook at Nordic Artists of New York and learn more about our grassroots mission and our incredible roster of artists at nordicartistsofnewyork.com, where you can also sign up for our monthly newsletter of Nordic and Baltic art events in New York. This podcast is produced by me, Petra Jasmina, with the amazing Kristi Rosma, and supported by Finlandia Foundation National and Petrified Productions. The theme music is by the wonderful Finnish singer-songwriter and composer Eeppi Ursin. You can hear more of her music via eeppiursin.com or on your favorite streaming platform. Thank you for being with us on this journey to True North. See you next time!